You ready to do this, Stu?
I am ready, Spencer. Punch it!
Welcome, Super Friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot is Stu Jones.
Booyah.
We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 80. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on our website, fortofnerd.com. We have links to iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by, relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Stu, how are you, my friend?
I'm really good, man. It has been a really good week. Lots of stuff going on. How about you?
I'm doing well, man. I feel like this week I'm a little more back to normal, we'll say.
Did you get a weekend?
I had a weekend and I got some sleep too, so I'm not going to be hopped up on NyQuil. I'm not going to be craved for sleep, so I'm doing well. So what was going on this last week? Why was your week so good?
Oh, well, playing Lord of the Rings online. Surprise. Right. Having a conversation about Lord of the Rings, and you hang around someone for a long time, and me and Boya, who, by the way, she says shout out to Spencer, so I figured I'd pass that on. And
what's up?
But anyway, so we're just talking, and she knows that I've got a daughter and all that kind of stuff, and she had asked what my daughter thought of Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, should I have introduced her to Lord of the Rings? And just kind of thinking about it, and
because most 7 right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean, it's iffy there, right? But
yeah.
The cartoons could pass, but I don't do the cartoons, so figured I'd kind of evaluate that, and so I went and got Lord of the Rings. I was looking for extended edition, can only get that online these days, but really that would have been for me anyway. So got the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we sat down and we watched Fellowship of the Ring Friday night. It's a long 3-hour movie. She is a 7-year-old, no matter how smart or lovely she is. Her attention span is about the size of a gnat. So she made it through 2 hours. We made it just inside the Mines of Moria when the doors close on them. Okay. She started getting tired, but she asked if we could watch it again or finish watching it. So I'm like, okay, well, she's enjoying herself. So we watched it again, finished watching it the next morning. She liked it. Her favorite character surprised me. She actually has Gandalf Legos. There's a lot of beautiful women in there. She's a girly girl, princess type. Legolas. I did not expect that. I'm like, okay, so because he's super cute, and she looks at me with the weirdest look of disgust. It's like, no, he's awesome with his bow. And her favorite scene in the movie was that first fight after they entered Moria, just where they're just kicking everybody's butt with the cave troll and all that kind of stuff. So I was really surprised by that.
Cool.
And then it keeps going. She again, attention span of a 7-year-old. She spends hours filing down these half popsicle sticks into swords. And she had me construct a bow out of a Q-tip and a piece of yarn that she was really disappointed didn't work out very well. But she got detailed in this, and those stupid things are sharp. But she's all in. I was really surprised. I figured if she liked it, it would, be something. But man, she's really digging it. So that was awesome. And then actually watching Fellowship of the Ring after being immersed in Lord of the Rings online for a while really just kind of gave me the chills, and seeing how closely the detail of the movies is fantastic, but seeing that transition into a gaming environment and all those little details they put in there, that was eye-opening. So that was pretty cool stuff. I didn't have to go to Portland last week. And then tomorrow, I don't know if do you know Puddle's Pity Party?
I do know Puddle's Pity Party. I'm quite a fan. I like him.
He is in town tonight and tomorrow night.
I'm so jealous.
I happened to be within 30 seconds of the site opening. I got my tickets, and I've got front row center. A friend's going to go with me. I'm super, super stoked to see that, man.
That's cool. You'll have to let me know how that goes next week when we talk.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's
Nice.
going to be a Puddles Pity Party episode, just so you know.
Well, cool. Anything else going on?
If it was, I forgot.
Okay. So I had this really cool thing happen to me, and I think you're going to like this a lot. One of my coworkers has listened to the podcast. His name is Glenn, and he's listened to the podcast in the past, and I know he listens semi-regularly. He actually came out to the Fallen Patriot ride and rode with us, so that was really kind of a cool thing. And so this week, was it this week? End of last week. It was like maybe a Friday. So I know the last week's podcast had released. He says, "Hey, I want to show you something." I said, "Okay." And he pulls up his phone and he's listening to Heir to the Empire on his Audible.
Ha.
And he says, "I was listening to the podcast and you were talking about it and I got really interested. So I went out and got it." And I was like, "That is awesome." It was just one of those like little moments where I was like, I know that for a brief thing, that the podcast has influenced, someone in some way to go try something maybe they haven't read before or seen before. And it was just kind of a cool little moment. I was like, I'm like, you got to tell me what you think of this and, what you think of the series. And so we ended up talking about it for a little while, but it was a kind of a cool little moment there.
Yeah. One of the things I like, so I like talking and I like talking about nerd stuff, but really the drive to podcast is to start a conversation. Right. And
yep.
And to get that feedback, man, that must have been awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it's true. Like every time we interact with, the super friends of the show, they come out to things or they interact with us on the social medias or whatever. Like it's just a lot of fun. Like I get a big kick out of it because, like you said, man, we're just nerds. We just want to hang out. We just want to talk with others like us and talk about the things we're into. So.
I've got the swirlies ready. I'm just ready to take a swirly at any time to prove my devotion to nerddom.
It's been a long time. Speaking of nerddom and my lack of Star Trek Discovery, I'm getting closer.
Son of a gun.
I'm getting closer because I figured out. So I set up my Plex Media server, and then I had some issues with it. It wasn't working right, and I realized that the Plex server had set up, because I have it set up on a Synology box, which is a NAS, network attached storage device.
Right.
And I realized that when the Plex server installed, it actually installed a Plex user. And so I had to go give the Plex user read-write access to my media files. And once I did that, now it's all scanning and it's trying to come in, and I realized I'm going to have to go back and clean up my movies because it's pulling in all these like special bonus stuff, and like so they look as extra movies. I gotta figure all that out. But it is getting the TV shows all loaded up, so I'm getting closer to Star Trek Discovery. Not quite there yet, but I'm getting close.
That's one of the things that drives me nuts about Amazon Prime Video is if you actually rent a movie from it or buy a movie from it, it's got all the special features, but it tags them all at the end. There's no way to search through it.
Right.
Yeah.
My mom's been in town for like the last 2 weeks. My sister-in-law, Steph, started a new job, and my brother became a Mr. Mom. He's a stay-at-home dad now for a little while and is going back to school, so she came in to help out. And I didn't get a chance to see her a ton. Today was her last day, and she's flying back home. But over the weekend, I got to see her some and spend a little bit on the day with her on Saturday, and then I had the whole family come over on Sunday, and I cooked up some chicken and ribs in that old pit barrel cooker.
Potbelly.
And had the old pot belly going, and we had a nice time with the whole family. And the funny thing is, like, Charlie is really, really particular about like eating meat. He'll eat meat, but for some reason, if it's something new or something he hasn't had before, like he'll just freak out and say he doesn't like it until I convince him to try it and play a little game.
I mean, he's a kid,
right? He's a kid, right? But he's had rib meat before. This time I was like, oh yeah, you love rib meat. I was like, okay, do you want to hold the bone and eat it off the bone like Stapleton boys, or do you want to just me to cut it up? And he goes, I want to eat it on the bone. And so he didn't eat a ton of it off the bone, but he was holding it in his hand, and he was, of course, like holding it like you'd hold like a popsicle. So his hand was on like half the meat, and he was just kind of like gnawing at it. So he's got some work to do, but I was super proud of him because he tried something new and was excited. And so that was kind of a fun little moment. And I was, high-fiving him with my messy rib hands and, encouraging him to keep doing that and telling him, this is how the Stapleton boys do it. We eat ribs on the bone. And he thought that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
But the last thing, tomorrow is actually my 9th anniversary, Brita and I's 9th anniversary. But Saturday, we went out on a date because we hadn't been out in a little while.
Ew, gross.
But the funny thing was we went to dinner. We went to teppanyaki, and so we got to, got to watch them do all the fancy little knife work and, throwing the shrimp.
The onion volcano.
The onion volcano, yeah, the whole nine, tossing the egg and catching his hat, that whole routine. And then we realized, we didn't really have anything else planned. So, we went over to Walgreens, and my wife, got some ibuprofen because she had a little bit of a headache. And then we went to Best Buy, and I got an adapter for my amp that I'm putting back out in my garage and setting up. And we kind of walked around and bought some, little trinkets and toys that were on sale. And then we drove over and got, some Menchie's and we didn't really have a plan. The dinner was the thing, but it was just kind of nice to get out and, hey, what do you want to do? I don't know. Let's go look at this and not have kids and have a few hours where it's kind of quiet. And I think that's the first time I've been in a Best Buy without kids or everyone in tow for a few years. So
nice. Now, sometimes the planning in and of itself can take away from... It can add stress to it. It can take away from the enjoyment of it. Sometimes you just go and do stuff. So yeah, by the way, July 2nd or... whatever that Monday is around July 2nd, I will not be able to record because my daughter and I will be in Oregon on vacation.
Right.
We have a couple milestones. We know when we're going. We know what we're doing day one. We know where we're going to end up in the vacation. But I have intentionally not planned a single thing in the middle of that. And if we just hang out at our sister's place and just talk for a couple days, great. If we go to the coast, great. Whatever happens... Get some ibuprofen at Walgreens. It'll be good.
That's right. Yeah, man. You just flow. You just go with the flow.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's cool though.
So yeah, that was my week. We did watch I, Tonya, the movie about Tonya Harding over the weekend, and it was interesting. I was expecting it to be more of a comedy. It was kind of a dark comedy, but all I just kind of came away with, I was like, man, she got beat up a lot by family, by ex-husbands. I was like, I just felt bad for her. But
the Tonya Harding propaganda movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, they covered all the things, and there was some funny bits in there, but I just felt bad. I was like, ugh, rough life. I'm like, that's just not the best probably home environment growing up. So,
well, until she's tried to read Fellowship of the Ring while out in the field with army buddies. She doesn't know pain.
Speaking from experience, Stu?
No, there was another guy. A friend.
We kicked the crap out of that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I brought the socks.
Nice. Who brought the batteries?
Soap. They use soap.
Soap now. Yeah. Soap now. Gotcha. Well, what do you say we move away from family trauma and army trauma, and we move on to Rebel Intelligence?
I guess, but I love family trauma.
Aww.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Stu, welcome to Rebel Intelligence. What do you have for me this week?
Well, first thing I thought was pretty interesting, World of Warcraft. I have done my time.
Yep, done that.
I have a World of Warcraft tattoo. I have a character that kind of became my online persona for everything, even outside of World of Warcraft for a while. One of the things that always kind of got me about World of Warcraft was collectors. You've got people that have to have every single mount, every single pet,
right.
Hunters that have to tame everything, yada, yada. So, of course, Blizzard being the crafty devils that they are, they really kind of help perpetuate that idea. There have been a lot of special rare mounts that you can only get through like donating to certain charities. They've even added some mounts that do some things, like having a vendor mount, a repair mount. They added a transmogrify mount. The one thing that's always been kind of elusive to everybody is the auction house. Being able to trade in the auction system in the game has been pretty limited to like the capital cities. There's like a black market vendor, that kind of thing. Well, they finally went and did it. You can now get an auction mount.
Really?
Really. So you could be anywhere you want. Buddy in your group or whatever, or in your raid, has an auction, sell off all the things that you've been gold farming about. The cost of this thing, though, you I'm just gonna say $500.
What?
5 million gold, which I don't know if you know, they have the tokens that you can buy for cash for playtime.
Yeah.
So 5 million gold. Translate that into the tokens. Real world value of about $475.
No way. Just okay. So here's the thing. Like, I look at it this way. First of all, I played World of Warcraft. I did my time, right? Same as you. I would never put real world money into gold or gold farming. That's just, you can come by that. You know, you can make that. It once you get to the high enough levels, like, you just make stuff and you sell it in the auction house. You can do some research, figure out what's selling for a good amount, what's rare, and then jack up the prices on that. You can make a killing on some stuff.
I've been playing really spotty here and there with the last few expansions, and even then, like, I'll only play for a couple months. I walk away from it with about 1 million gold. Easy. Just from playing the game, not even really trying too hard. I'll undercut everybody. Yes, I'm that guy. You're welcome. But yeah, if I really cared about the game that much to want that mount, $5 million gold wouldn't really be a stretch. But for anyone that's kind of coming into this, isn't good with WoW money, whatever the case may be, that's crazy.
I have another issue with this. I don't like the idea of a mobile auction house.
And why is that?
I always liked the idea that the only place you could do the auction house was in Orgrimmar or Stormwind, which I never was really in Stormwind. It was always Orgrimmar because I was Horde.
For the Horde.
Loktar Ogar.
Me not that kind of work.
Yeah. I liked it that it was a community hub, that you had to go there to do that. So, there was lots of other things to do. You could run into people. You could look for groups. You could look for people that, to join your guilds. You could look for specific roles for your raids. And if you're now not having that sense of community, that hub of activity, it just, it seems to me like that would lessen the social aspect of the game. And for me, World of Warcraft is a very social game.
Sure. They even did that with like new expansions coming out with the hub cities like Shatrath and Dalaran. Like, every time they introduce a new hub, you see a noticeable decrease in the people in the main cities. And that sense of community has been dwindling away into near nothing for several reasons. One of them being that the cities are now kind of sparsely populated. They did kind of close down Shatrath to major portals. Dalaran's still kind of there. They never really fixed that, but then you also have like the server merges into mega servers, the instant gratification and being able to join a group or a raid immediately without having to actually reach out to other people.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's all going to go away. That's not going to change because of the auction mount, but it's certainly a product of that. And it's, I guess, just another mechanism really to get away from the social aspect. You've got everything you need at the tip of your fingers now.
I also just wonder if it's another way for Blizzard to kind of cash grab on World of Warcraft, because I know their numbers and subscribers has been dwindling for years now, and they used to publish their numbers rather frequently. And then a few years ago, they stopped because their numbers kept bleeding, and then they'd get all this press about, losing subscribers. So I just wonder if, like, now introducing something like this, we're like, hey, you could go pay enough, real world money to get this thing try to get people to come back. I don't know. Just maybe.
Well, or it could be that as well as a money sink. There is so much money out there in the game that's been earned that everything has pretty much become worthless. So you start dropping $5 million at a time. For one person, maybe that's a lot, some effort, but you think about the thousands of people that are going to want to have this. That's a huge chunk of money taken out of the economy.
Oh, that too.
But
all right. So speaking of money and the economy, there's this thing that happened today, Stu, where Schwinn let you dial in to the number 1-800-SCHWINN to get the opportunity to buy a replica of Mike Wheeler's from the Netflix series Stranger Things, his bicycle. And it's like kind of like a beach cruiser. It's got that big kind of beach cruiser seat, but it's got these like ape hanger handlebars, and it says Stranger Things kind of on it. You had to be one of the first 500 people to call in today, but you get this kind of cool, you can get this ability to buy this really cool kind of like 80s style bike. It's got pegs for carrying passengers on this thing, the normal spoke wheels and the single drive chain. The cost is $379. It's packaged in a Stranger Things themed box, and they promise there's going to be a bunch of other Easter eggs and things hidden all over the bike to look at. Yeah, I don't know. Is that something like you would be into if you were like, I don't know, wanting to get a bicycle? Would you try to go after something like that? Is that like a real collector's piece, do you think? Or is this more of a nice tie-in? It
doesn't have an auction house on it, but
true.
It's cheaper than an auction house. That's crazy. If the first thing that comes to my mind is anyone who's likely going to want a bike like this is probably too young to be watching Stranger Things.
Right.
Because there are some scary parts. But it's got enough, it's relatable enough to pop culture that yes, I think the price is reasonable for what it is. I don't think it's overpriced. I mean, a new bike without the logos can still run you more than that, even for a kid's bike.
Right.
And I think the tie-in, given that we live in a society of nerd culture, that could be cool. That could be popular. I would not give it a hard pass. I would put some thought into it, but I like it.
$379. I mean, that's not bad for a bike. But the question is, if you bought this because you're a collector or a big fan, would you actually ride the thing? Would you put it to use, or would it be $379 to sit in your house somewhere?
I'm the guy that has the car that should be sitting in a garage and never does. So yes, I'd ride the hell out of it.
How much do you think these are going to go for on eBay?
Oh, jeez. Why does everything have to go to eBay?
You right, know what's going to happen. I mean...
Oh, man, I wish I would have thought about that. I would have bought one.
$1,000? $1,500 maybe?
I'd say they'll probably cap about $2,000, stabilize about $1,100-$1,200.
Wow. Still, that's a lot of money.
Yep. But, people were buying boxes of Twinkies for like $5,000 once upon a time, so...
Right, and then the Twinkies came back, so what are you going to do?
Hey, Schwinn might bring back the bicycle. Oh, right.
Wait a minute.
No, I don't know. It looks pretty cool. I could understand somebody who wanted it. I would want it myself.
Sounds so good right now.
I know. I'm hungry. Oh, that spongy goodness.
Cream filled.
Ah, speaking of cream filled, we were talking about Thundercats the other day. I'm just laughing at my own cream filled joke for Thundercats.
Yeah, I like that.
We talked about the, I don't even know what to call it.
The crappy animation style?
I was going to call it courageous, but crappy works. The things that we make happen on this podcast, apparently we were the catalyst to cause Twitter to go all up in an uproar about the animation style of Thundercats.
Thank you, Super Friends. You made that possible.
You're absolutely. You rage. There's but interestingly enough, people just can't be mad on the internet. They have to be mad with some kind of, something to kind of back them up. So this has now been dubbed the latest iteration of the very apparently derogatory term Cal Arts style. Cal Arts style being the very particular cartoon style that we're seeing in the new Thundercats, the kind of formless blob of a cartoon, super vibrant color kind of stuff. There were a couple cartoons way back in the day that this is kind of accredited to. But it definitely is a deviation from having any kind of realistic style of art to it. Let's see, what else was there? Some of the shows that were considered Cal Arts, Disney XD's Gravity Falls and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Steven Universe, and now Thundercats Roar.
Are they calling it Cal Arts because like a lot of these people came from like University of California or like, California Art Institute, something like that? Or
yeah, so it's well, I would have thought those to be one and the same, but maybe you're California Institute of Arts. There we go.
Okay.
So, and at one time that was actually really relevant. The funny thing is they've all dubbed these Cal Arts style, and that's not even really what Cal Arts does, except for like a brief period of time where that was kind of their arts focus. So it's just kind of become this this bad name in cartoon now as Cal Arts style, and Thundercats is living the Cal Arts dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the way they're doing this show. I'm really not.
Oh man, yeah. I thought at once upon a time I was going to potentially watch it, just the first episode, just to see whatever. I'm really no. Wouldn't even movie pass it.
Wow. Well, speaking of money and movie pass, I don't know. I got nothing there. Moving on, some other information those Bothans got us. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. I love Star Wars memorabilia.
No.
There's things I would like to get. However, just recently, like in the last week, there was a piece of memorabilia that went up for sale that looks kind of cool, but I mean, I don't know if this would be something that I would want necessarily, but it's a piece of the original Death Star from A New Hope. And it was put up on eBay in partnership with an auction site, Hollywood Memorabilia. It was something like 2 feet long and like a foot across. And it had a starting bid of $1,000. It ended up selling for $16,200 to a Star Wars collector. It came with 2 certificates of authenticity from people who actually worked for ILM and built this thing. And the collector's name is Steve Grad, who acquired it. And it came with like a little box, and it had some LEDs so you could show it off. And basically, it's just this piece of the outer side of the Death Star. And what makes it interesting is a lot of that stuff ended up getting trashed and thrown away.
Right.
But this didn't. And someone, an ex-ILM employee, owned it up until 2014, and then it resurfaced, and then it went on sale. And so, anyway, it's just one of these kind of cool things. I mean, we know eBay's huge. We know that eBay is really big for selling a bunch of Star Wars memorabilia and Star Wars stuff. But Steve Grad, that lucky Star Wars enthusiast that he is, owned a piece of the Death Star. And I was looking at this. If I were to own something or wanted to own something, would it be just like a piece of that? The Death Star? Not really for me. But what I would be interested in would be if they still had like some of the replicas of the models of like the X-Wings, the TIE Fighters, or the Star Destroyers that were used for filming. Like that would be cooler, I think, to me. Something intact, something that's a little more whole versus just like a piece of.
I'm kind of torn on that because one part of me is like, well, if it's an iconic piece of the set, then yeah, that could definitely be worth something. But you look at the pictures, and I guess my litmus test would be, if someone else were to see that, would they immediately identify with what it is and think it was cool?
Right.
I think someone who's really, really into Star Wars and has been thinking about Star Wars in the last 24 hours may immediately draw the conclusion. Not so sure here. I'm actually kind of surprised that it only went for, $16K?
Yeah.
Because I've seen some of that stuff, just go absolutely crazy.
Well, it's like
especially
the original
Darth Vader stuff. Oh my gosh!
But it's like an original lightsaber that was like screen used. Like if you had if you had, Luke's lightsaber from A New Hope, like, oh my gosh, that thing will fetch an incredible price.
Or the milk blue bottle from Last
right.
Jedi.
Something that's very, very identifiable.
Still with liquid in.
Yeah. Something that's big, something that's iconic, something that's identifiable. Those pieces will go for a lot more.
Yep.
This, you're right. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I might guess what that is just looking at it, but I mean, it's not going to be super obvious.
Yeah, I would actually be able to identify the bike from Stranger Things far earlier than I would this.
Right.
But well, still, I mean, I wouldn't turn it down. I wouldn't pay $16,000 for it. But if
right,
if I inherited it from somebody, I may put it up on eBay.
Right.
I mean, put it in my living room. Or
right, exactly.
I'm just hoping no X-wings fly by and destroy it. I'm trying to think of some way to segue into mine, and I just can't have it. So, anyway, much like Star Wars in some way you can't possibly imagine. Oh, a hero! Bumbled Dork Minder friend, sometimes I try to say his name legit, and I can't even anymore. Benedict Cumberbatch.
There you go.
I'm just so used to like intentionally flubbing it that I can't even come out of my mouth right. Anyway, so we know him most recently as Doctor Strange, a superhero with some magic powers, also pretty phenomenally well known as Dr. Sherlock Holmes, and the voice of Smog. Lots of other awesome stuff, but also kind of turns out that he's a pretty big badass in real life.
Bad A, Stu. Ooh, bad A. Come on.
He's a British guy. He can't possibly be a bad A. That just doesn't work out very well. But so he's walking down the street, or no, he's not walking down the street. He's driving down the street in a cab. Sees a guy getting mugged. Could have easily driven off. Could have called the cops. Could have shouted at somebody else because he's in a car. Even legitimately, like, "Hey, go get that guy!" Yell at him, whatever. Gets out of his cab and goes over and kind of like starts pushing him away and protecting the guy. Like, just puts himself right in the middle of the situation. Multiple guys robbing this guy. Not even just one. So, yeah, it was an cab Uber, same stupid thing. So he like runs up, he shouts at him, gets him off the guy, he chases down the muggers, they run away, he makes sure the police are called. That's more than you need to do. Even to do the right thing, there are many ways that he could have pulled back before going to all that trouble and still done the right thing, more than most people would even do. But I thought that was pretty bad A of him, I must say.
Nice. He's a jolly good chap who just wanted to get involved. Yeah. No, that's actually a pretty cool story. I like that.
Could you imagine being the guy, though? Yeah, I was saved by Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, yeah, right. Here he goes again.
Yeah, hit that sauce a little too early. Yeah, no one's going to believe him.
Kyle and his stories.
Oh, Kyle.
Classic.
So something happened today that released I was excited for. I'm a big fan of Wreck-It Ralph. I love that movie. It was the first movie we took Charlie to see when he was like an infant, even though he doesn't remember that was the first one to see. Today, a new trailer dropped for the upcoming Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. And let me tell you, I am so pumped about this movie. It just looks great. I don't know all the details, but Ralph and Vanellope von Schweetz end up leaving their game to go on the internet, and they end up like seeing a bunch of cool stuff, and they end up in this place where it's kind of like a hub, a central place of activity, and Vanellope ends up like getting right into the middle of a whole bunch of Disney princesses, and they like threaten her because she's not supposed to be in this. It's like a princesses only room. And then they have this like little quick conversation, like, oh, did you get kidnapped? She's like, no. They're like, were you poisoned? No. Were you this? No. Did a man have to, overbearing man have to save you? She's like, yes. And she's like, she is a princess. Yay. And it just, I don't know, man. I'm excited. I don't know what the story is going to be, but I love the first one. If the writing is anything like the first one, I'm all on board. I want to see this thing. Let's make it happen.
So the company I work for, Simpless, there you go, free promotion.
Nice.
We did annual Halloween group costume kind of thing. So we did Wreck-It Ralph a couple years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was the donut cop. I had this giant inflatable donut. I got a cheap policeman's hat, a big utility belt. And I will say I overcommitted to the costume.
Uh-oh.
I have not shaved my goatee off since I got out of the service in 2000, except for 2 times. The second time was when I shaved off the beard part for the Wreck-It Ralph costume, and I had like the ultra cop stash.
Nice.
It was so horribly, awfully awesome. Like going out trick or treating, I had more adults like give me the thumbs up and high fives for the mustache. It was terrible. I should maybe put it on put the picture of that on the Twitter, and I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah,
but no,
let's see that.
I love Wreck-It Ralph. I was excited to see this trailer as well. I was sad that you mentioned the princess scene because I wanted to. That was clever. It could be a lot of good fun.
I love that Cinderella breaks her glass shoe so it's sharp edges like she's going to cut her. Oh, man.
And then Snow White at the end of that all.
Yeah. La, la, la. Go hit up the YouTube. Go see this preview. Go see this trailer. Like, get excited. Get hype. Get hype.
The hype is real. Well, I have a sequel to talk about of my own. And it's in the danger zone.
Uh-oh, look out.
Yeah, Mr. Tom Cruise, with Tom Cruise in it anyway. Teaser shot him. I know it was him. Him with his Maverick helmet in front of one of the jets with the caption, "Feel the Need." I know that we had a couple years ago, it was kind of confirmed that they had the sequel in development. So I guess, so he tweets it, or it puts it on Instagram, I'm sure it hit Twitter, with just #day1. I'm not sure what that means, because if it's been in production for a while, then, but yeah, so that's a real thing. And also Val Kilmer official.
Did they get Val Kilmer in it?
I can't even, oh my gosh. So from Val Kilmer's Instagram.
Oh, this was a while ago. Yeah, I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It was when they announced
please
it.
put me in the movie. Please put me in the movie. Yeah.
And he's looking so haggard. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that was just, I don't even know. That would scare me. Like, I hope he's like the retired old pilot that like fell to alcoholism just so he can fit that image. Because I don't hope that for him, but if it's anything but, it's not going to be believable.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't look like the top fighter pilot that he used to be.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's funny because he's like, in his Instagram thing, still got the moves.
Yeah. Still got the plaque. It's like, you got a fake award in a movie. Yeah.
Hold on to that dream. But yeah,
right.
I would watch it. I don't know that I'd be super hyped and need to be in day one kind of thing, but I would use a movie pass on it.
Yeah, I'd movie pass it for sure. I love Top Gun. It's a great 80s movie. Sequel, I don't know. We'll have to see more of what comes out later down the road.
It's going to have to be different though, right? Because I mean,
it has to be.
Because like all those war movies, all those jet fighter movies, and there were a couple other war movies that kind of came out that were really focused on the glory of it and the action. That was all kind of that was really a need fulfilled due to not really having a lot of war stuff going on.
Yeah, there was propaganda. It's like, hey, we got to get more people in the Navy. Come be a fighter pilot. See how cool it is. Tom Cruise is in the Navy.
Right. Now we've been in various multiple wars for years and years and years now. That's something that you have to treat with a little bit more respect. You got to be a little bit more topical. You can't tell the same story that Top Gun told and really get away with it.
But is there still going to be shirtless volleyball? I mean, that's what the world really wants to know.
Well, if there's not, then why am I movie passing it?
You seriously have to go watch the honest trailers for Top Gun. So good.
I watch.
So good.
Yeah, honest trailers are where it's at.
So good.
Hashtag honest trailers.
I am out of stuff in Rebel Intelligence. Do you have anything else?
No, I didn't.
All right, then let's roll on. Last week we were talking about Star Wars stories from the old EU that are no longer canon, and we had a 2-part question. We asked you, the Super Friends, what's your favorite story, and which story would you like to see made into a movie?
You know, I gotta say, last week's, and it has nothing to do with me coming up with the topic. I just think that we were both really passionate for the same thing. Last week was really fun, and seeing some of the discussion come out of it during the last week. Since then, some of my afterthoughts, what you brought up about Heir to the Empire.
Yeah,
man, that was a good episode.
I put Heir to the Empire on my Audible wish list because I'm out of credits right now. So even though I've got it on paperback and I've read it multiple times, I want to listen to it now. So anyway, let's go over to email. We're going to go to Peter Christensen. It says, Dear Nerds, Stu, I like your phrasing that Rogue One went from a -A to A. I also read and loved Grand Admiral Thrawn books. I haven't reread them in a while, but I have seen a number of people that don't like them. It's weird to find out people hate something you thought everyone loved. Hook is another one of these things. I don't know that I've ran into people that hated those books, but if you're out there, don't let me know because I don't like that.
That's not what this podcast is about at all.
Right. We discourage you on liking things that we like. It says, my spoiler-free review of Solo. It's an enjoyable movie, and your enjoyment on it will depend on how particular you are about Harrison Ford's portrayal of Han Solo. He says, my favorite Star Wars story is Rogue One. The Skywalker saga is too big a part of culture now, and it's like when a recognizable actor plays a minor role and it yanks you out of the immersion in the movie. Rogue One felt to me like I imagine the original Star Wars felt in 1977. Remarkable effects, great no-name actors that disappear into their characters, and a tense storyline.
Yeah.
The Star Wars story I would like to see made would be a multi-generational story to show the effects of the galaxy-wide transition of power, from the Old Republic to the Senate to the Empire to the Rebellion to the First Order. We know that the Empire are the bad guys because of the background music, but a lot of people were probably better off under the stability of their control. The prequels portray a much more wealthy, opulent, and prosperous set of worlds than the grungier originals. But is that earned wealth like modern society or a shadow of lost glory like Gondor? Also, how connected are the different worlds and how are they welcomed into galactic society? I would love to see a Star Trek-like exploration show set in the Star Wars universe. Cheers, Peter.
Well, and then you'd have all the Star Wars fans going up in arms about some kind of new direction that they took it in, like they did with Star Trek when they made it more like Star Wars.
Right. I do kind of like the idea of the kind of seeing like the effects of all the transitions of power, over a long period of time in areas. Because like you do kind of see that in Rogue One where you see some areas that are controlled by the Empire and like some of these cities and like, how oppressive it is. But yeah, like what would it be like to live on one of the core worlds, going from Republic to the Empire to the Rebellion to, the new order, then to the First Order, all that kind of stuff. That'd be kind of cool.
I could see this like really working in kind of an anthology type setting, like maybe a weekly show where every week the episode is just on a completely different aspect and time in the Star Wars universe, but there's kind of like that common theme to it.
Yeah.
Like you just described, that would be amazing.
I'd be down with that.
They're going to announce it next week. That's
right.
So that'll be cool.
That's right. Going over to Facebook, Caleb Albers, and buckle up, folks.
He's only got a little bit to say.
Yes, just a little bit. It says, what up, nerds? Can't say I can contribute too much to this episode because I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. But hold on, here we go. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the movies, but as far as digging deep into it more and other stories, I can't say I do that very much. So I'm just going to give my ideas for what I'd like to have made. First off, Obi-Wan has always been one of my favorite Jedi, and I think that a movie to see him go from Ewan McGregor to Sir Alec Guinness would be pretty great. I'd like to think that maybe Obi-Wan and Darth Vader crossed paths at least one or two more times before the events of Luke, which he means A New Hope. And seeing another fight between Vader and his old master with today's CGI and graphics would be muy bueno. Another movie I want to see would be a Jedi Sith origin story. I want to see how the discovery of the Force happened. I think it would also be cool if the people who studied the Force had different factions or areas that they studied. Like one section, the Jedi could focus on using the Force for insight, prophecy, healing, balance, and peace. Then another section of Knights could focus on combat. Learn how to use the Force to help anticipate an opponent's moves, give them strategic advantages, and help them protect the people of the region.
That's called a role-playing game.
Right, exactly. I was like, this sounds like KOTOR, it sounds like the Old Republic, yeah. It says the last section could be the Sith, who could be people who understand that there's a dark side of the Force, and they study it to learn what other capabilities the Force has, and they discover the ability to use lightning, keep people from dying, etc. Then there could be a falling out between the Jedi Knights and the Sith, and they separate with the Sith, and some Knights going the route of the Sith, and then the rest going the way of the Jedi or the Knights, and seeing them realize the need to combine forces or risk being taken down by the Sith, becoming the Jedi Knights. Then we could get into what the different colored lightsabers symbolize and the creation of the red saber. I'd also like to see a lightsaber pushed to its limits. There's some stuff I've seen where a red saber is powerful but highly unstable, and I would want to see what it would look like. But I also want to watch the former Knights train the Jedi in ways of the lightsaber combat and see Knights earn more spiritual discipline and watch them all become Jedi Masters as we know them today to take on their Sith brothers and sisters in an epic battle that equalizes them, ultimately bringing balance to the Force. The last story I want to see is a young Yoda film. I remember seeing a picture someone drew of what Yoda looked like as a young adult, and thought that seeing Yoda in his prime would be just plain epic. Maybe add a bit of badassery to an already fantastic Jedi Master. Woo! Okay.
Is that everything?
I think so. Hold on. There's like 2 more replies. Let me just check. No, yeah, we're good. We're good. So here's my thing. I like kind of the idea he's putting about training and like learning and studying the Jedi. I do feel like a lot of that has been covered in the game Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah. And in the Old Republic MMO as well. They had some elements of that.
Yes. And you can get information about like what knights, what kind of branches of Jedi Knight, go with blue sabers versus green sabers versus like a yellow saber, and then the red saber, clear sabers, I feel like all that's kind of been covered somewhat. However, but it's not been in a movie.
Exactly.
And so I think that if you could like I said with my answer,
I was just going to say it ties into what you want from a movie. You want a KOTOR movie.
I want a KOTOR movie because that would cover a lot of that. And you could also have a really great story while getting a whole bunch of background and greater depth, which would give, I think, greater appreciation to the Jedi Knights and why they're so cool and why every kid that I knew growing up wanted to be freaking Luke Skywalker, wanted to be a Jedi Knight. So
one of the things that kind of occurred to me earlier in the week after we had recorded the episode, and So one of the things that I liked about the books, what the books brought, were an opportunity to explore history in a medium that lends itself better to that. Going into all the, I guess, the subtleties of training and all that stuff. Some of that stuff can be kind of dry when you see it on screen, but if you're in a book and you've got all this detail, sometimes that just lends itself better. And we definitely saw a lot of exploration of that in the EU books.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know if that would necessarily translate well to the screen, but obviously you can pull a story out of that somewhere and get some semblance of that kind of tied in. So, I don't know. Maybe that's what the next trilogy or the next potential 2 trilogies are about. Maybe they explore some of that becoming a Jedi Knight, or maybe they take that into a new way of thinking about the Force, and who knows.
KOTOR. I'm just saying.
We're never going to see a KOTOR movie.
I know. Grr, I want it so bad, though.
I know. I would like live in that theater for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No showers, nothing.
It would be a
Rolling around
little
in
stinky,
popcorn.
but we'd make do. We'd make do. Going over to Twitter, Nerdish67 at DSpin67 says, Solo. Oh, too soon? I'll show myself out. He says, honestly, I don't know. I think another Star Wars movie may be too much. Star Wars is special. Too many of them hurts the brand. I would rather have an animated series versus another movie of characters' backstory. Just my 2 cents, though. Okay, fair enough.
I think we feel that, or some of us feel that a lot with Marvel stuff too. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean the same people making those decisions across both lines of franchises are
same people. Yeah. Paul Calico at pcalico84 says, I can't remember the name of the books, but spoilers, a species known as the Yuzon Vong come back from outside the Outer Rim, and they kill Chewbacca by slamming a moon into a planet.
Spoiler.
I believe the book is called Vector Prime.
Yeah, I think you're right. I haven't read that actually because, I heard about that spoiler detail and I just didn't want to read it.
I read the book. I remember I didn't like it very much, but I'm pretty sure that's Vector Prime. So someone out there, search that out and see if I'm right. I think it is, but...
It just proves you're listening.
That's right. You know what, Super Friends? Thank you so much for taking the time to answer some of these questions. We really appreciate it. You obviously take the time, and we love your input. And you can always reach us at all the normal places, which is the email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com. You can get us on Twitter, which is @fortofnerd. You can get us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/fortofnerd. Or you can call the voicemail, which is 1-801-477-7687. And we will continue to read your answers each and every week.
And remember, if you leave a voicemail, it's your voice on the show.
That's right. Stu, how can the Super Friends of the Fortress of Nerditude help us out this week? Do we need anything from them? Can they help us in any way?
They can blow up the next version of the Death Star.
Ooh, how do they do that?
By leaving a 5-star review for the Fortress of Nerditude on iTunes.
Boom.
It instantly
Shakalaka.
destroys it. It's like summoning a proton torpedo. Wow. I'll see myself out. No.
Proton.
Star Trek, Star Wars, it's all crossing over now. No, the 5-star ratings help. It gets us more visible. That visibility is key. Get us on some lists. More people will check us out. We'll get more feedback. I'll start growing hair. It's ridiculous what a 5-star review on the iTunes will do.
Nice. Oh, I forgot to ask you, did you buy $24 worth of Oreos?
Yes.
Nice.
They've got so many flavors these days. It's crazy.
What flavor did you go with for your $24 worth?
Oh, let's see. I got peanut butter double stuff because that made a reappearance for a brief moment. I went with more of the cherry cola. I love the Pop Rocks in. I said app. Wow, I had a flashback. I said App Exchange. This is not Salesforce. Leave the 5-star on iTunes, not the App Exchange. Jeez. Wow. Anyway.
Awesome.
Yes,
I got you all over the place.
Tons of Oreos.
Nice. I don't know why that just popped in my head. So this week, we're actually going to be doing a movie club. We're going to cover Solo. Usually Brita joins us. She begged off this week, though. She was really, really busy and was not prepared to bring her beautiful, wonderful insight to the podcast. So we're going to give her the week off. We will talk with her again next month.
That's okay, because I've got a lot to say.
So let's do this, because this is still currently in the box office. There's still a chance people may still go see this. We will go spoiler-free, and then we will warn you, and then we will go into spoilers there at the end, so as not to disturb your movie-going experience if you have yet seen this. So,
I suppose.
Jumping right into Solo. Let's just take first impressions. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Stu.
I enjoyed it. I won't lie. I did not expect to actually enjoy it much. One thing that I think this had going for it was that the trailers kind of aligned with the feeling of the movie a lot better than Last Jedi did. So there wasn't, that was like part of it is like, I even looked at the trailers for Last Jedi after I watched it. I'm like, that is not even the movie they're trying to sell you here.
Right.
So there's better alignment there. I thought most of the casting was really well done. There were a couple good action sequences. But overall, if they had never made it, I wouldn't have missed it.
So I liked the movie. My expectations were in the basement. I mean, the basement for this movie, because all the turmoil we've talked about, right? Firing the directors and bringing in Ron Howard with a year to go. All these reshoots. You're hearing that the main actor was getting like acting lessons like while production was going on. Just all this kind of led me to have my expectations really, really low. I saw the movie and I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that I liked it and I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say that it's my favorite Star Wars movie, because it's not, and not by a country mile. But it's also not the worst Star Wars movie I've seen, and not by a country mile. So it's kind of right in the middle. It's a good movie.
Was it another Rogue One for you?
No, it was not a Rogue One for me. But it's a good movie. It's fun. It's worth watching. I'll definitely say that.
One of the things, one of the detractors is that this is not a young Harrison Ford, yada, yada.
Right.
And I mean, you really can't hold a person accountable to that too much, except the people that don't seem to forget that Ewan McGregor actually did an amazing job at playing a younger version of a main character as well in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
So that expectation can be met, and I don't feel this guy was Han Solo.
Although we did have a horrible portrayal of Darth Vader as a youth by both Hayden Christensen and what's his face.
That's his name. What's his face?
What's his face? Yeah, what's his face? That played little Annie.
No, it's true.
That was a main character played by two different actors in a movie trilogy.
Except
horribly done.
I also have a counter to that in another portrayal that was done spot on from an older character brought back later, and that was
Ewan McGregor.
No, the screaming baby Luke Skywalker.
So let's talk about casting. Alden Ehrenreich, who plays Han Solo. I know it's not Harrison Ford going in, right? But I found that after a little while, I just suspended my disbelief that this was this was Han Solo. I just had to say, okay, this is Han Solo. It's just not the portrayal I'm used to seeing. And once I kind of let that go, after maybe about the first half hour of the movie, then it wasn't such a big deal to me. Like, I wasn't expecting Harrison Ford. And I think I had to realize that for me, you can't anticipate anyone to be Harrison Ford or look like Harrison Ford. If you go back to Superman Returns, right, they hired Brandon Routh to play basically the Christopher Reeves version of Superman. He looked a lot like Christopher Reeve, but I mean, they had to dub in Christopher Reeve's dialogue in parts for him. The movie wasn't great. Brandon Routh was not a great Superman, but he had that look, and so I'm glad that they didn't go with someone who was just a complete copycat of the Harrison Ford look.
Yeah, I can't even go that far, man. You said something there that made it seem like you had to force yourself to buy that it was Han Solo, and I couldn't even get that far. I mean, like, and I'm going to draw a lot of comparisons to Ewan McGregor just because it's the same kind of dichotomy in character. I bought Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi from moment one that he was on the screen. This guy, I couldn't even believe it, not even trying. It just never sunk in except for like 2 lines maybe in the movie that were like, oh, he got it. But they were so stand out that kind of proves the point.
I also think maybe your ability to look at Ewan McGregor and buy in as Obi-Wan is because we see a very, very, very old Obi-Wan in A New Hope. I mean, he is retirement age, AARP Obi-Wan, if you will. And this is
he's got the placard on his speeder.
Right. This is like Obi-Wan in his early 20s, right? Yeah. And so you can go a lot of different directions. So maybe because where we see Han Solo in A New Hope, he's maybe about 30 years old. And in this movie, he's maybe like 26-ish.
They could have pulled the Grand Moff Tarkin treatment on him.
Yeah, but who wants that Uncanny Valley? I'm just saying. Okay, so we have Alden Ehrenreich. Like I said, if you're expecting, as Peter Christensen actually said in his email this week, if you're expecting Harrison Ford, you're probably going to be disappointed and let down. But if you're not tied to Harrison Ford, or you can get past that it's not Harrison Ford, it's not bad. Yeah. Not great, but not bad.
It's not even Han Solo for me. They could have made the same movie about an unknown character and pulled it off just as well, or maybe even better.
Let me ask you about Chewbacca. Did you feel that Chewbacca's portrayal in this film fits thematically with how Chewbacca is portrayed in the other films?
Well, the actor that played him this time, I don't know. I don't really feel like he. No.
It's not. Well, it's not Peter Mayhew. Okay, it's not Peter Mayhew, and Peter Mayhew was the original Chewbacca who played him through a ton of movies, but due to health reasons, has kind of had to bow out of the role.
Yeah, I was being a smart A.
I know you were.
The funny thing is I had not even thought about whether it was a good portrayal of Chewbacca or not. I mean, it's simply Chewbacca right up until you asked that question. The funny thing is now that I think about it, though, it feels like this is Chewbacca having evolved through the other movies already. His personality that you see in things, it's like this is an evolved form of Chewbacca, not an earlier form of Chewbacca like we saw, even if it was the same Chewbacca as in A New Hope.
Right.
So that's very insightful of you to ask that question. I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers. He does say a lot, so.
Right. I felt like the Chewbacca was okay, but I felt like there was something off that was missing. And I think maybe you hit it on the head, is that he felt more evolved than we see him in A New Hope. And so it feels like we're taking Chewbacca from The Last Jedi and putting him into the role in this movie, which takes place years and years before.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have Woody Harrelson as Beckett, and Beckett, obviously from the trailers, so I'm not going to give anything away. He's a smuggler, or a smuggler type. What did you think of Woody Harrelson as Beckett in this movie?
I liked him better than I thought I would. I actually was expecting traditional Woody Harrelson, which it kind of was, but it really fit here kind of well.
Yeah.
So
he played kind of that good, roguish character that, you're right. I think it was Woody Harrelson, but it wasn't, it felt good.
Yeah, it did. I actually thought that was going to be a distraction. So bonus.
Okay. Emilia Clarke as Kira.
This is that point in the show where we go, "Rrrr."
Oh my.
My.
I'll tell you what, the little Star Trek reference there, a little Sulu. Oh my. I really, really, really liked Emilia Clarke's portrayal of Kira. I thought she played a really good, nuanced character. At the beginning of the movie, I feel like her character is going to be kind of cookie cutter, kind of plain, but as you see her throughout the film, it's a very nuanced portrayal of her character. I thought she had a lot to do. She was an interesting character. I was really excited to see her on screen, not just because of her good looks, but I think Emilia Clarke is an excellent actress. And not once did I think this is Daenerys Targaryen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I never thought that.
There's nothing more I can really say about her until the spoiler section.
Okay, then we'll move on. Okay, my favorite character in the whole movie.
You're going to say the droid.
Lando Calrissian, played by Donald Glover. Can I just say that I loved Donald Glover back in the Community days. I loved him when his little role in The Martian, everything he's in. But as Lando, I thought he played a perfect Lando Calrissian. I mean, I sat there at one point and I remember thinking, I really wish this was a Lando Calrissian movie and not a Han Solo movie, because I want to see more of his portrayal of Lando.
He lived up to the hype. I'm not even a fan of his. I haven't seen really anything else, maybe here and there, of his stuff, but he did a fantastic job. I actually like him as Lando a little bit better than Billy D.
Ooh, that is a bold statement.
He was just saucy in this movie.
Wow.
I not to say I didn't like Billy D, and it's easy to see how this character could become that.
Yes.
But he was oozing Lando.
So we got Tandy Newton as Val. I liked her character, but kind of forgettable, to be perfectly honest. There wasn't a lot of meat there for her to play.
Yeah.
And then you have Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's the voice of the droid L337.
Oh, I gotta say I'm a little fatigued from comic relief droids.
I thought the exact same thing, Stu. We are like of one mind here because...
I mean, I think they pulled it off so freaking well in Rogue One, but still, let it go.
This felt like it was just on the droid side, it's just kind of a blatant ripoff of what they did in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Just with a little bit of a different bent towards like the personality. Just a little bit, not a ton.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan. Dryden Voss, played by Paul Bettany, which we saw in the trailers. You know, he's got all the scars on his face. I thought he was just Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
An angry Paul Bettany. There didn't seem to be a lot of takeaway of me coming away going, he played an amazing role. I think he did it really well, don't get me wrong, but he didn't seem to stand out to me.
Well, in contrast, though, we just said the exact same thing about Woody Harrelson, but said that he pulled it off. And in this case, I mean, it was just kind of there. I honestly think if you had removed him from the whole equation, that character, that would have even added maybe a little more intrigue to some of the stuff I want to talk about later.
Right. That's kind of like the main, big part of the cast, and then it drops down to smaller roles. But I thought that overall, this was a really well cast movie. There are a few choices that I could have been a little more excited if they maybe cast someone else, but no one that really stuck out that was like horrible casting. Like no one that struck me that was like, oh no.
Yeah, I've only got one. Just one.
Yeah. I get the criticism. I'm with you. I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
And I'm not even a guy of like high expectations, honestly. I will give anyone a chance in a role. I don't expect them to get another Harrison Ford. But man, I don't feel like he fit that role at all. Sorry.
So let's move on.
Something we're gonna have to.
Yeah. Something that's really big in Star Wars movies from the get-go has been the score. I think we've talked about this in the past, that score is important. I know Steve and I have talked about this as well when he was on the podcast, that a score can make or break a movie like this, because it's not going to have a bunch of, pop culture songs. It's not going to have a soundtrack. It's going to be score-based. Well, let me ask you your impressions. What did you think of the score for Solo?
The score for Solo is the first score that I never sat back and went, wow, that score is amazing. It, they tried to merge Star Wars traditionality with a heist movie, and I just don't think it came together for me. Like, I mean, it was there. It wasn't a distraction, but it did not stand out like every other score has for Star Wars, even Rogue One's.
So I'm with you on this. I remember walking out of the theater going, you know what would have really made this movie feel like it's even more of a Star Wars movie is if the score had more Star Wars-ness to it. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of a bad description. I said, okay, you know how...
Well, it's not, though, because the Star Wars sound, all those themes are very iconic. Those are the things that you can hear, and within 1 second, you know exactly where it came from. And if you're really diehard into Star Wars, within 5 seconds, you know exactly what scene.
Right, exactly. I mean, I've listened to the original scores for the original trilogy so many times. I can listen to it, and within a few seconds, I'm like, oh, this is Luke in the ice cave on freaking Hoth. I'm like, he's hanging upside down right now, and he's reaching out for his lightsaber. And people are like, how do you know that? I'm like, it's just the musical cues. I know it's about ready to happen. He's going to reach out. Then he's going to kind of drop his arm. Then he's going to reach out again. And then the last second, it's going to move a little bit. Then bang, it's going to hit his hand. Lightsaber is going to drop. He's going to whack off an arm, and he's off and running.
Well, even with the Phantom Menace, they released the soundtrack before the movie came out.
Right.
The first time I listened to that, I'm like, this just really, I don't know, this is a different kind of thing. But it grew on me. And then after seeing the movie, everything came together. Love it or hate it, the score was perfect for the Phantom Menace and all the thematic elements, and even adding the chorus element to it.
So it's interesting that you brought up the Phantom Menace, because I thought the Phantom Menace too. The song "Duel of the Fates," which is the big number when you've got the lightsaber duel. You know, it has this big kind of like rousing feel to it, and I was like, why do we not have a big kind of rousing score or musical piece when we're doing the train heist?
Yes.
If that had been something like, I think it could have lent to tension to what was going on screen. It could have really portrayed emotion. And I feel like in these Star Wars movies, the score is like, it's another actor. It's another character. It's another part of the film that really helps the audience buy into what's going on.
Yes.
Peter Christensen says, hey, we know who the bad guys are because of the background music. Well, that's a good score doing its job. It makes you understand, here's a good guy, here's a bad guy, here it's a chase scene, it's this. And I felt like the score for this one was really underwhelming. There was nothing that really musically stood out that jumped out and say, this is a Star Wars movie. Was it an okay score for a normal movie? Sure.
Yeah.
But for a Star Wars movie, you got to have these big moments, and you need to have some emotion coming from the score and highlighting the things that are going on screen to make you buy into it or not buy into whatever's going on. And I felt like it was lacking that. And I know that the director of the score was not John Williams. I know he wrote some little pieces, but it wasn't John Williams. It was a different guy. His name was John Powell, and he was the composer for it. Like I said, he's done a bunch of other stuff, and he's a good composer, but it was missing that thing that makes it Star Wars.
Interesting that you bring that up, because I'm going to break the fourth wall. I did just Google something. Rogue One's score was Michael Giacchino.
Yeah.
So
he's done the Star Trek movies.
Yeah, also not John Williams, but
yep.
But Rogue One soundtrack was tense. It held the tension through the movie.
Yes.
So could have been done.
Yeah, it could have been done. I was a little let down on that. But let me ask you, visually speaking, were the visuals good for you? Did this feel like a Star Wars movie to you visually?
Oh, that's a little tougher for me to answer, because it all felt like one act of a Star Wars movie in visuals. So if I were to say I did like the visuals, that's not a lie, but there wasn't as much of it as you would expect to see. I guess the scenes were kind of more drawn out. And to be honest, like the one thing that I did not like about The Force Awakens was the scene shifts. There were a million of them. The swipes, right. Holy crap. So I'm glad they didn't just take that. And we're only really looking at one story, so there's no need to kind of jump back and forth. But it felt like, yes, some of the things that they tried really hard at were really well done. The train heist, that was pretty brilliant. I like that. Another scene towards the end of the movie, I thought that was really good. But otherwise, I guess it felt like kind of one big casino kind of feel to it. Just like everything's taking place in a cantina, not casino. But I don't know. It feels like there was something missing there. I just can't really peg what it was.
See, I actually really like the visuals, because we see the characters on an ice world. We see them on a desert world. We kind of see them in this, this kind of cantina area, which you kind of see in the trailer where they first meet Lando. There's a kind of like a jungle-y kind of world you see later on. There's, but there is some of that feeling of like some indoorness, like we're inside a lot in different parts of the movie. So I felt like there was a lot of things, but I go back to A New Hope. There's a moment when Luke is standing out on the sand dunes right outside his home, and he's looking at the twin sons of Tatooine, and it's this great visual. And then, of course, let's go back to the score. You have an amazing score that's swelling up behind him, and it provides this moment. I will never forget the first time I saw that and I made that emotional connection with that scene. It is one of my favorite scenes in any movie because it just was perfect. Like that moment was perfect. And I didn't feel like we had that because we missed the score. There were some great visuals, I think, in this movie. But if the score had been there to match some of that.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I'm missing is it's not a whole picture without the sound involved. But so, and I don't mean to distract too much, but it just kind of occurs to me, like even with the visuals and everything else, it really feels to me like they allowed this movie to rely on our experience with all previous Star Wars movies before us. The evolution of Chewbacca, the score, the scenes. They're just like, they're catering to an audience who already knows Star Wars. Rogue One worked in part because it stood out on its own. There were so many people that had never seen a Star Wars movie, never cared about a Star Wars movie, loved Rogue One.
Yeah.
That was missing here. Score, Wookiee, all of it just kind of relies on, hey, this is just another Star Wars movie to kind of tide you over.
Right.
So, my thoughts anyway.
You know, coming off last week where we talked about like having more Star Wars stories, right? Or other Star Wars stories we'd like to see. Is this a Star Wars movie that, after now seeing this and, you know, without spoiling anything, is this a Star Wars movie you felt we needed to see? Was this something that in the pantheon of Star Wars stuff
Nope.
was a needed movie?
Nope. That's exactly what I was saying, is it was unnecessary.
Do you think, though, that the movie on its own, not having to like deepen much, do you think if this movie were made prior to any of the Star Wars movies coming out, do you think that this movie would be looked back on fondly, or do you think it would be an outlier? What do you think?
Let's take that a little bit further and suppose that this is the very first Star Wars movie that people ever see. Right? Production companies were like, this is going to bomb. Nobody wants to see this. We can't afford to pay anybody. Blah, blah, blah. Lucas decides to make it anyway. The people that mattered the most, the fans, just took it, ran with it, and here we are now so many years later. If that had been Solo, it probably would have been a movie that people talked about a little bit because it's, you know, a space opera kind of thing. And hey, it's got a train heist and maybe it's got some attention like a good action movie at the time, but it is not going to kick off a saga.
Yeah, I agree with that. To me, this feels like we want to tell a story after we've already got you buying off on everything else that's going on.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and if it had to be the first thing you saw, I don't think you come back for another one because I don't think it stands out enough. I mean, why A New Hope stands out in my mind so much is that you had great storytelling as far as like, you know, this big villain and this big good guys, and there was laser swords, and there was, you know, dogfights in space, and there was all these things that were hints of a bigger thing to come. And I don't think this had that.
That's such a great litmus test for what I would expect a great Star Wars movie to be. If this were the first Star Wars movie, would you want to see more of it? You can't really go in outside of that with the trilogies because they're intentionally part of a bigger whole. But say Phantom Menace, as much as I actually liked it, if that was the first Star Wars movie, never would have gone anywhere. Right. Force Awakens, I think, would have been exciting. And I think it possibly could have been enough to kick that off.
But Rogue One
is the first Star Wars movie that I wanted to be a first Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been even better than A New Hope to launch it off. But they built it that way intentionally, and they did it so freaking well. Solo,
So let's talk about box office, because that's something that's inevitably, there's an expectation for a Star Wars movie, right? I mean, the movie cost $400 million to make, including the marketing. And so there's an expectation. I mean, Last Jedi was only 5 months ago since that came out, and usually we've got a lot more time in between. Right now, as it sits, Solo, A Star Wars Story has only made 149 million domestic, and worldwide it's only sitting at about 264 million. So it hasn't even earned back what it cost to make and market this movie yet. Why do you think that is, Stu?
Well, I can tell you why a lot of people think that it is. Like you had just mentioned, it had only been 5 months since the last Star Wars movie, that we're being oversaturated with it, that it's not one of the main anthology films. But we have evidence to the contrary. Black Panther was only a few months before Infinity Wars.
Right.
And Infinity Wars was not shy of dominating every box office record you could think of.
Yep.
I mean, granted, it's the bigger hook movie to that, and this is even in a world where people are kind of starting to feel a little tired of oversaturation in superhero movies. I think those are all valid points, but I think nobody really wants to look at the potential truth that this Star Wars movie just wasn't well made for any number of reasons. Or that it wasn't as good a movie as they would hope it would be.
Right. I mean, and we've talked about all the turmoil that happened prior to the movie hitting theaters, but I'm agreeing with you. I think that if this had been Rogue One, and Rogue One released 5 months after The Last Jedi, I don't think we would have a problem. I don't think
it would have been a distraction from The Last Jedi.
Right. I don't think anyone would be talking about fatigue.
Yeah.
I think people are using that as a handy excuse. I think that, all the turmoil and everything that went into it, I just don't think that this movie is that good of enough movie to do the kind of blockbuster business that people are expecting of Star Wars movies. Now, because of that, you're hearing a lot of people online saying that this movie is a complete flop. And you'll hear that any time a movie doesn't make back the money that it cost to make that. But let's be honest, $264 million, that's not like chump change. I mean, that's making money, but it just hasn't broken what it needed to yet.
Right. By regular movie standards, whoa, great. By Star Wars movie standards,
it's not good. Yes, exactly. And so I also think that that's a little bit of a different measure that it has to live up to. Now, I hear a lot of people online saying, that hopefully this sends a message to Disney that they need to, maybe scale back like the next 9 movies they've got planned. Stu, do you honestly think that this underperformance of expectations of Solo is going to affect their schedule and make them rethink anything?
I do. Honestly, I do. I think there have been enough signs. I think there's enough of a precedent, especially in the superhero plethora of movies, especially around DC, where they have pulled back on the reins on some things immediately based on other things, Suicide Squad being really dark and people being kind of put off on that. And also Batman v Superman.
Right.
Those influenced how they approached Justice League phenomenally. Like the characters that they focused on, the screen time for the characters, the whole outlook of the movie, some rewrites, and I know that there were some things that they were unhappy with the current version of it. But I definitely believe that it has the potential to cause Lucasfilm to kind of step back, especially because they have so many productions that they have planned to build hype, but haven't started production yet.
Do you think this changes Episode 9, which is the next movie to come out?
No.
See, I don't think so either. I think Episode 9's locked in. I think nothing changes. What I do see is...
I think their anthologies are locked in. Not just Episode 9, but the next trilogies that they're planning on making, yes. But all the spin-offs, definitely under some microscopes.
Yes, I definitely think that's going to be different. And so, if I were them... find a way to tell interesting stories like you did in Rogue One without just saying, hey, let's do a whole movie based on this one character and let's find a way to tell a backstory, because you need to have a good quality story to really drive a movie that people are going to want to see. If it's just like, hey, here's some more information about this one character,
That's why I kind of think an Obi-Wan movie would work, because I think he's got some really interesting stories behind him. And why I'm actually kind of a bit leery on a Boba Fett movie, because I think it's really kind of going to be more of the same of what Han Solo, there's a couple interesting heists in it, but in his case, bounty hunts, but enough to make a movie around?
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so here's your fair warning. We have talked about the movie as much as we're going to spoiler free. We're now going to get into spoilers, and we're going to do that in 3, 2, 1. Okay,
Spoil.
Stu, spoil time. Let's get into this. I am a huge fan of the way we find out how Han Solo frees Chewbacca in the old extended universe, now the Legends story. What I felt like this was one of these things, right? We had to hit.
Give us a brief summary of that.
So basically, Han is in the Imperial Navy, and he basically gets caught for deserting, and he gets tossed into a pit where they say there's a big beast down there that's going to eat you. I hear that, and immediately I'm thinking, this is how he meets Chewbacca. This is I was like, it's not going to be like a Rancor or anything like that. And Chewbacca is basically a little feral and extremely muddy, and looks like some Rastafarian version of Chewbacca. I wasn't a fan of that. Here's the thing, right? Yeah, it's kind of goofy, but you find out Han speaks some, Kashyyyk or Wookieese, if you'd like, and ends up convincing Chewbacca to help him find a way to get out of this big mud pit. Mm-hmm. It's really convenient that they just smack a big pole a bunch of times and eventually it cracks and breaks. Like, Chewbacca wouldn't have been like bashing against that thing for however long he'd been down there already. That I didn't buy off on. I was not happy with how he saved him. Also, I didn't find it's believable because we know in the other stories, in the original trilogy, Chewbacca owes Han a life debt. That's why he sticks with him, because he owes him a life debt for freeing him. In this, I kind of felt like it was like they kind of helped each other get out. I didn't really buy off on the authenticity of Han did something noble to save Chewbacca. What was your take on that whole situation?
So there are some legends in Star Wars that we know about. One of them being the Kessel Run, the other being how Han forms this bond with Chewbacca. I guess the weight of that bond and what that must mean for everything that follows is such an emotional experience that there has to be something that event in and of itself, which should have been a movie, a much better movie,
right?
That should have had so much more weight to it in this movie. It shouldn't have been a simple little pit scene and like, oh, hey, all this whole life debt for years and years to come in Star Wars saga is explained in this 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was a huge letdown for me. A huge letdown.
Yeah.
So we got that, right? I really did not like the way the Millennium Falcon looked at first in the movie.
I did,
because
actually.
I was like, this doesn't look kind of right. I'm like, I know that this is different, and they changed the nose end. And then when they eject the escape pod, that's what's on the front of it, and then it looks like the traditional Millennium Falcon. And then I was kind of like, okay, this is cool. I did like the Millennium Falcon. I loved the fact that it gets beaten to hell in the movie.
Yeah.
Because that just makes good sense for the Millennium Falcon, because when we see it after this movie's over in a little while, it looks pretty lived in. It looks pretty roughed up and beaten, So that I like that.
So for me, and this kind of goes back to Han Solo, is it's identifiable in a Han Solo way. It's a rugged smuggler ship. Many people are fans of Han Solo throughout the saga. He's never been my favorite character. I have the same feelings about the Millennium Falcon. It's never been my favorite ship. I love things like the B-Wing. I love the little fighters, but also the special versions of the Star Destroyers.
Right.
Millennium Falcon's never done it for me, right up until the reveal of it in Force Awakens.
Oh, that was so good.
So it's funny because I grew up on the original Millennium Falcon and never really liked that. But then because of, the huge gap and everything, and we haven't seen it for so long, and it's tying back to the original trilogy, I've loved it since in the new trilogy. But honestly, I felt the same way about it that I did in the original trilogy. I didn't really care for the ship too much. I think it looked a little bit sleeker. I liked that it was a little younger with the single cannon. things like that. But overall, just didn't really do much for me.
So we also get to see the Kessel Run in this movie. The Kessel Run, to me, the first part of it was just kind of standard, right? We're going to go in, we're going to get to Kessel, we're going to follow the space route. And then we had this whole, like, liberate the droids, little subplot that goes on that was just annoying to me. It was all sorts of annoying. I was like, oh, okay. It
was a running joke that would not end.
Right. It was like, please, just let's be done with this. But when we get to the point where they have to make the Kessel Run and they're trying to get out so they can get the mined gas out, that I thought was visually pretty cool looking. And there's this big, huge monster that they find in like the middle of the maw and that, ends up getting sucked into it and whatnot. Like, that was kind of cool and that was kind of interesting, but it didn't feel like, I don't think that it feels all that great, because the idea that he makes the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs means, he found a way to do it shorter than anyone else.
Because he was faster.
Right. But it's, really it's like navigating through it. To me, it felt like we're trying to teach a math lesson to recorrect something that was said a long time ago and to fix, a problem that fanboys have had. Kind of got that sense a little bit.
Yeah, it was the revelation of how the port on the Death Star was weakened.
Right.
And to be honest, I felt that was a bit weak and lazy in Rogue One even, but they didn't even pull it off that well.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. I felt like it was the first real tension in the movie.
Yep.
But even that was kind of short-lived and a little shallow.
I did like the fact that at the beginning of the movie we see Kira and Han together, and they're kind of these lovebirds, and they're on Corellia, which is this big shipbuilding planet, and you actually see a Star Destroyer being built overhead, and they're like these little slum hood rats, right? I mean, they don't have much. And it's kind of a classic trope. Something happens. One of them gets off planet. One of them has to stay. And when we get back later and we see Kira later on, she's in a different position. And, you kind of get the idea that she's done some things she's not happy about and she's not the same person anymore. Even though that was very tropey and we've seen that kind of before, I really did like it. And I really liked her portrayal of it. I thought that it was pretty good. However, we get a moment in the end where you realize she's not going to go with Han. And even though like she's been saved, she's now in a position of power, and she's probably never had that ability to have that power before. What did you think of that moment when you realized, oh, she's not going to go with Han. This isn't going to be a happily ever after.
I saw it coming from the moment he reunited with her. Exactly.
But it's very, very telegraphed.
It is very telegraphed, but I still loved it anyway.
Yes.
I think the main boss guy, his whole purpose in that was Dryden Boss was to distract from her taking power.
Yep.
Like, that was the sole purpose that character even existed, because without him, then it would be obvious that she's in charge. So let's not make it obvious that she's going to be in charge and put another character in place.
Right.
But I loved her character, though.
I loved her character.
I did not like it, actually, on the very first scenes with that. I think it was there as an explanation to make us feel like that was why Han trusted her. And I just have to interject, the whole way he got his last name, give me a freaking break.
Yeah, really kind of dumb.
That was the dumbest thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, I loved the turnabout. I think it could have been better, but that was worthwhile.
I also saw the turn with Woody Harrelson's character of Beckett, where he'd said earlier, is like, don't trust anyone, and then he double crosses him, and I saw that coming.
Yeah,
like there was no surprise there. But what I did like though about the portrayal when this happened is you realize that even though Han shoots Beckett first, right, which was a little wink and a little nod, that he immediately runs over to him, and it was like, like trying to take care of him. And I think it was Kira earlier said, like, she's like, this isn't you. You're the good guy. You're the hero. Because we see that later on that Han's, supposed to be a smuggler. He's kind of a rogue character. But really at heart, he is a good guy and he does do the right thing in the end. And we kind of see that played out throughout this movie some.
He did come back for his, rewards. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink for the Death Star.
Right.
We've seen him take the right course for sure. Yeah, I mean, it really all just kind of gives you events that shape who he becomes later. Like the relationships that he had with the characters in Solo, it kind of provides that explanation. But I don't know that we needed it, ever.
Right.
So,
And now, I really like the fact that, like I said, the portrayal by Donald Glover of Lando was so spot on. I loved it.
Yes.
But I loved the little things. Like, I loved the moment when he's basically doing like a vlog where he's like trying to tell like stories. Like, it's just a little quick thing. It's funny, but like, that's super Lando. And I love the thing, like, how many capes does this guy have? Because he's got like tons of capes in his closet. I just loved it. But what I really liked is when we do see Han win the Millennium Falcon from him, it's because Lando's cheating and Han catches onto it and manages to remove the ability for him to cheat.
Yeah.
I like that. That to me played into even more of the scoundrel that is Lando Calrissian.
It's like Lando is the real deal, where Han is still kind of getting his feet wet.
Yep. Yeah, because Lando's supposed to be kind of retired from that life, so to speak, and then kind of gets drawn back in, which is, kind of a, thing that happens later on. He's completely out of the game. He's up, mining Tabana gas up at Cloud City, and then he gets sucked back into it, right?
Yeah.
So...
No, I love that character quite a bit.
Let me ask you this, because this is a big, massive spoiler here. So once again, even if you are listening and we said we're spoiling, now I'm really going to spoil things.
By the way, Boya is going to be listening on Thursday because she hasn't seen it, but she likes spoilers. It builds the excitement, so she'll be tuning in on this part, definitely.
What did you think about the big reveal of who the boss actually is that Dryden Voss works for?
Well. I have a few things to say about that. So, the funny thing is we're relying on a certain character that supposedly never died.
Well, we can say it because we're spoiling it. Go ahead.
I know, but it's still,
No, it's Darth Maul.
I know.
Darth Maul appears.
So, the funny thing is, though, is that he was resurrected in the EU, not in the canon.
Yes, he was. He was resurrected in Star Wars Rebels at the very end of Season 2.
Yes, but he was resurrected... Well, okay, so that exists because of EU. Right?
Sure. But I mean, canon, he does exist, is what I'm saying.
So EU is partly responsible for that. They use cartoon canon as well, which is definitely a twist on what they expect Star Wars fans to be into.
It's a bold move, Cotton. Bold move.
It is
See how it pays
bold
off.
Move. But different actor, which I thought was interesting.
No, it wasn't actually. It was Ray Park.
Really?
Yep, Ray Park
didn't even
played
look
it.
like the same character.
Yeah, I actually had to look this up because I was curious.
Now too.
Ray Park played the character, but Sam Witwer actually did the voice.
Oh. Why?
That is a very good question.
I guess really he just kind of like has like some low tone whispers in Phantom Menace.
And Sam Witwer has done other stuff for Star Wars movies. So
overall though, it totally makes sense. Especially in the EU, we see that Darth Maul was kind of involved in more underworld kind of activities.
Right.
Kind of like if you look at the political bent that Sith has, that was definitely his peeps.
Yeah. Were you expecting that turn? Were you expecting that character to show up?
Yes. Because Quora, that stupid website where people ask questions and get answers, Somebody asked, how is Darth Maul still alive in Solo? That spoiled it for me.
Oh.
The most unlikely of places for me to find spoilers, and it was in the question. Oh man, I wanted to find out who they were and beat them down.
So I didn't expect it to be Darth Maul. I was really, really, really hoping it wasn't going to be Emperor Palpatine, because that would have been too obvious, I think. Because this is, a crime syndicate. And so it needed to be someone. And I was really hoping it wasn't going to be Jabba the Hutt, because they do mention, like, hey, there's another big job. There's someone putting together a crew on Tatooine. I was like, okay, well, that's got to be Jabba. I think if they would have done Emperor Palpatine, it wouldn't have made sense, because he's not really, he's the freaking emperor. And at this point, he rules everything. Why would he need to, to be directing a crime syndicate at kind of that level?
Right.
He's got a freaking Death Star he's building.
Well, as we know, Black Sun is prevalent throughout many stories that involve, the smuggling side of Star Wars.
Right.
So that made sense. That was, I guess, one of few things in that movie that actually made sense. So.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting Darth Maul, but when I saw him, I was kind of excited though, because I was like, ooh, now we've introduced him back in the movies. Even though I know, Rebels introduced him back into the canon and, was brought back in some EU. This is now, a thing, and he's in the movies. And so,
except there's not going to be like a duo movie, Solo Part 2 duo.
Here's the thing though. This is where my wheels start turning. If Obi-Wan has another movie. Yeah. How about that idea? Because
revenge.
That's right. That's right. He could, once he finds out that maybe Obi-Wan is on Tatooine, maybe he comes after Obi-Wan, something like that. That could be interesting, because obviously if we're going to do an Obi-Wan movie, the last time we saw him, he drops off a little baby, he hangs on Tatooine, he just grows old there and just watching Luke. There's got to be something in between. So what if he finds out that an old nemesis of his, the man that struck down Qui-Gon Jinn, his master, is out on the loose again? He would try to track him down. He would try to find him. And so that could be a bread nugget. That could be a little crumb that was left that could give us an idea of where an Obi-Wan movie could go.
That's the name of the Obi-Wan movie, Bread Nugget.
Bread Nugget.
Bread Nugget, a Star Wars story.
So, yeah, it was an interesting spoiler. It was a small cameo. It was quick, but...
Oh, but it was meaningful.
It could be very, very meaningful.
That's funny, because they give you more emotion in that, 5 seconds than they do, most of the rest of the movie.
Right. Yeah, like when Val dies, Beckett's wife or, I don't know, long-term girlfriend, I was like, all right, let's move on. Seriously, I felt bad, but that's just kind of how it was.
But 5 seconds to Darth Maul, 2 minutes at the end of Rogue One for Darth Vader. See, they have the ability to make amazing moments happen. And that feels like that was just lost here. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a missed opportunity. Like I said, not a bad movie, but a missed opportunity. It could have been so much more.
Well, so let's take it back to the rescue of Chewbacca. Compare that to Darth Vader's scene at the end of Rogue One. There didn't have to be a lot there.
Yeah.
But they had to make it meaningful. And that was just random. Oh, hey, hit this bar. Life debt.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't hold water for me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was really...
What
I
about,
really want to talk about
what about
plot.
the other bounty hunter reveal? Or the other smuggler reveal? What's her face?
Oh, where you find out she's a little girl and she's really trying to help a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Didn't care for it.
No, you didn't like that part of Dune?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I think I've read a book on this. It just, it didn't do much for me.
That whole rival faction could have been a much bigger deal too.
I was wanting it to be like swoop gangs or something, and but no, it wasn't. Like I said, I'm going to give my review. Like, the movie's worth seeing. I did like a lot of the movie, and there was parts of it that I really did enjoy. But overall, I think the movie's going to be somewhat forgettable. It's not going to be bad. You're not going to remember it because it's horrible, but it's just going to be somewhat forgettable. And I think for a Star Wars movie, that's the cardinal sin. Either make it great or make it horrible, but either way, make it a polarizing thing so that fanboys are going to be on one side of the fence or the other. This one's going to be a meh. Oh yeah, I forgot that was there.
I give it a 10 out of 10 meh. 10
Yeah.
out of 10 mehs were applied here. Yeah, it's take everything that you know about Star Wars, everything in the saga, include Rogue One, all the feelings, the thoughts, the epicness of it all. Take all those expectations that are driven from those things, put them in a nice little shoebox, put it at the top of your closet, go see Solo, then come back and reapply all those expectations.
Yes.
It was okay. It was not a good Star Wars movie, but it was okay.
Yeah. That was a good Star Wars movie, but it wasn't a great Star Wars movie.
I'm going to disagree.
I mean, it's not going to... Okay.
It was not a Last Jedi.
No. It's a good It's a good movie, but maybe not a good Star Wars movie. I think maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yep.
So,
I would see Solo again before I saw Last Jedi again, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've gotten everything I need out of Last Jedi. There's nothing more for me to enjoy. I could watch Force Awakens tomorrow.
I mean, you don't want to see Luke milking a walrus, and drinking the milk again? No?
I don't even care about that scene, really.
It's just hard to watch.
I'm just
It's
like,
bleh.
Okay, that was awkward. But yeah,
All right.
I could do without a troop of ninjas surrounding the bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so this has been our movie club review of Solo. I'm going to say watch it, but
it's movie passable.
Yes, check your expectations at the door. That's the best thing we can say about this. So usually we ask a question of the week, and
what's our question of the week?
Since this movie's new, I really don't want to ask a question of the week this week, except what I want to do is I want to put it to you, the Super Friends, and say, you ask us a question. We haven't done this in a while. It's your turn. You ask us some questions, and we're going to answer your questions next week. And we'll see how it goes. It's been a little while since we've done this.
Oh, I'm going to be so unprepared.
That's the beauty of it.
Ugh.
And I try not to. I try not to look at the questions until right beforehand, so I'm not like super prepped with like great answers, and I leave you hanging. With,
this is AMA Fortress of Nerditude.
That's right. So Super Friends, hit us up on all the usual places: the email, the Twitter, the Facebook, or the voicemail. Ask us your questions for next week, and we will read them, and we will do our best to answer them.
And we will rock
next
you.
week. That's right. All right. Well, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you.
Always.